People who have been Santa at the mall. What's the creepiest thing a kid has asked for Christmas? I have a cringy but story about a mall Santa. I was a freshman in college at my local mall. This mall is basically dead, hardly any foot traffic at all unless it's the weekend and I see a mall Santa. I accidentally make eye contact and he waves me over. I walk on over to him smiling and he's doing the whole Santa thing. I'm around 22 at this time and I'm playing along for fun to not make it all awkward. His elves, girls around my age, start talking to me and you can tell them and Santa were bored of and just looking for someone to talk to. Well anyway, they asked if I wanted to buy a picture with Santa. I was poor as crap at the time and was not paying the $20 for a picture. I started to panic internally because I was like, oh crap, did they just talk to me for the last 5 minutes because they expected me to buy a picture? One of the elves says she bets my parents would love it, and that's when the horrible idea clicked in my head. I looked her in the eye and said, oh, yeah, sorry, no, my parents are dead. They aren't BTW. Dead silence from Santa and the elves. Oh. One of the elves pipes in that she lost her dad a year ago, so she knows and understands what it's like. They then talked to me for about 20 more minutes trying to make me feel better. I felt like crap the whole rest of the month and I'll still think about it sometimes and cringe hard. TLDR. I lied to Santa and his elves and told them my parents were dead. This is one of my worst memories ever. I had helped Santa for almost 20 years, but mostly for private parties and events. I did cover for him many years ago in Little Mall in Belding, Michigan. A young girl came up with a group of kids and didn't even look up at me. I asked her what was wrong. She said I didn't give her what she asked for last year and started crying. I told her I was sorry and would try again this year. She said you can't. I asked you to stop daddy from hurting mommy and he still did. Now mommy is dead. I had absolutely nothing to say except I was so sorry. After that group of kids left, I went home sick. Took off my suit and threw it away. To this day, I can hardly bear this and I still think about it every Christmas time. Not creepy and not mall Santa, but I dressed up as Santa for Halloween one year and sat on the porch handing out candy from a sack. One kid looked excited until his dad said something along the lines of, now remember, that's not the real Santa. I gave him some candy. Then I reached into the second sack and pulled out a big butt, hand-carved, wooden, monster truck and handed that to him as well. Kid thought it was great. Dad, not so much. Freaking fantastic. That dad was obviously proved wrong. Don't let him dull your shine, Santa. This is a grim one. My ex's dad owned a restaurant and I worked there part-time in my late teens, so I witnessed this. Christmas Eves were usually really busy, so to earn more money his wife came up with the idea to pretend to be Santa for a few hours on Christmas Eve and charge something like £2 per kid. This one dad came up to my ex's dad. My ex's dad was Santa, not me, and paid the money for his kid and then went to the toilet with his other child, a baby, leaving the kid with Santa. Santa asked the kid what he wanted for Christmas, and apparently the kid whispered into his ear, I want daddy to go away. He asked the kid to explain why, and apparently the dad had beaten up the mother a few hours prior and had locked her in the shed in their back garden before taking the kid and his baby sister out to eat because they had been crying hysterically and he was worried the neighbors would hear and get suspicious. Santa then asked the kid for his address and told my ex, who worked in the kitchen, to call the police. I think some police went to the house, and then some turned up at the restaurant to arrest the dad. A social worker also came to collect the kids. We never found out what happened to them after that, but it ended up in the local paper and got loads of promotion for the restaurant. I mustn't have made myself clear enough. I wasn't Santa. I was the waitress who witnessed it from afar. My ex got me a job at his family restaurant. My ex's dad, aka the owner of the restaurant, was Santa. I didn't realize that this would blow up like it did and I feel like I need to just clarify that. I love Reddit. You guys have managed to put some kind of magical Disney movie spin on the thoroughly depressing situation which I'd never considered before. Crap, this sounds snarky but it's not. I appreciate it, makes it seem even slightly positive. That's heartbreaking. Hopefully it ended up well for the kids. My 2-year-old once asked Santa for a Christmas tree. He gave me the most disgusted look. I was horrified, because it was only the beginning of December and I was holding off until after her birthday party, the 5th of December. to put the tree up and my enormous collection of decorations for the house. I didn't want her birthday to be overshadowed by Christmas. My birthday is pretty near Christmas, 14th, and every year, my parents waited until after my birthday to put the tree up. I super appreciated it. You're doing the right thing. Also, the 5th is pretty early. That's one judgmental Santa. Not a mall Santa, but my fire department does a Santa visit to all the houses in my town. We have a few guys dress up as Santa and we drive around going house to house in the fire engines. One year when I was Santa we go to a house with a married couple and 2 kids. The woman is clearly pregnant. The daughter, about 10-12, creeped the heck out of me. I asked her what she wanted for Christmas and she looks at her, I assume stepmom, and says deadpan, "I want the baby to die." Jesus Christ, kid. It's possible that she wasn't allowed to express her frustration over a new sibling and vented it all at once. Not a Santa, but I remember when I was over at my relative's house I asked my little cousin what she wanted Santa to bring her and she said wanted boobs like her mom had. She was only about 6, so it was weird for me to hear her say that, but she was in a phase where she idolized her mom and wanted to look like her. Same hairstyle, same glasses, etc, so I guess it sorta made sense. I remember when I was a little kid, my sister asked Santa for a pony. I was next, so I asked for rat poison. For the pony, Tenyomi was an edgy little butthole. That seems inefficient. Should have gone for a nice jug of pony poison. I once was Santa for the horse club my mum and sister were. I've agreed on doing it because I thought it would be fun. I don't know if it's the same elsewhere, but people here who do horse riding are usually rich people, so rich families. So these 6 and 7 years old seriously were asking for animals, such as horses, normal, or turtles. One even asked for an elephant. And at the end of the line, one kid asked for a whole zoo. High hopes for him. I said I would, but I doubt he got what he wanted. Ended up ruining the whole Santa myth. Since when I finished, the children were still there and I shouted, "Mom, can I go now?" to their horse teacher. Oh, and the scary part there is how these children talked about actually possessing the animal, like a doll or any other toys, and not like actual creatures. Not a kid, but I had an elderly lady who used a walker insist that she wanted to sit on my lap. To 20-year-old me, it was unbelievably awkward, but I let it happen. I was a helper at the Easter Bunny set one year, so not Santa, and a kid was having trouble getting up onto the bench. The dad was adamant that she be let alone to do it by herself, but there was a line and after she fell 3 times I kinda felt bad for the girl. Anyways, I picked her up and put her next to the Easter Bunny, which the dad was not a fan of. He started yelling at me and pushing me. Long story short, he eventually tried to swing at me. That's where I drew the line. I moved just out of the way and swung back and hit him right in the jaw. That was the last year I worked at that set. Too bad that wasn't caught on tape. The Easter Bunny knocking out an unruly parent is exactly the kind of video that would get huge. There was a story on the news, not sure if it's true or not. A kid told Santa they wanted their dad or stepdad to stop touching them carnally. Then the Santa and some elves beat up the dad. I heard about that, too. One kid got on my lap and asked me if I could give him a bag of wiggly rice. I asked him what that was, and he said he ate some off a piece of chicken he found in the backyard. He said it was so yummy he wishes he had a whole bag of it. I was a heavy metal Santa outside the local guitar shop. Nothing creepy happened, just horns or middle fingers depending on how well I was playing that day. It's really cool to hear the echoes of a guitar solo off of passing cars though. This is the most badass thing I've heard all day. Not a Santa, but as an elf nearby. Kid maybe 11 years old and bangs below his nose goes up and whispers loud enough for me to hear, "I wish not to live anymore." I don't think anyone else heard it, and the Santa, pretty old dude but kind, tells him sorry, but there's so much more to wish for, and hands him off. Not a Santa, but a couple of years ago, the Santa who worked in a nearby town was fired. Why? An overweight 9-year-old boy sat on his lap, and Santa told him to lay off the hamburger and french fries. Overweight kids that young is so sad to see. I was at Publix and this grossly fat kid sat in the cart, not in the child seat. He couldn't fit there, and just kept demanding all sorts of different junk. He got everything he pointed at. While it's easy to blame the parent, his mother looked completely defeated and actually quite miserable. I used to photo the kids with Santa. A little girl asked for a boy toy. Santa was like, "What?" Her mom was a few feet away from the stage and says, "She means a truck." Reminds me of when I was a kid and my mom always asked for the boy toy with my Happy Meals in the drive-thru, but when we went inside and forgot and they gave me a Barbie instead of a Pokemon toy or something, I'd always be 1p little girl, so that might be where the kid got the term from or something similar. Maybe he misspoke, but one kid, maybe about 5 years old, asked me for a coffin. I don't recall if I sought much clarification. I must also share my most awkward moment, which happened when I was the Easter Bunny. 3 teenage girls wearing their cheerleader uniforms came to get their photo taken. One sat on my left leg, one sat on my right leg, and the other stood there hesitant for a few moments before finally making a decision and plopping down right in the middle, seating herself on my groin. I was probably biting my lip trying not to have a reaction. Fortunately, all anyone could see from the outside was my smiling bunny head. Dang it, you found my carrot. Not a Santa, but when my little brother was a toddler, he asked Santa for a baby brother or sister. Santa said he'd try his best. I'm not a mall Santa, but I've been answering Santa's mail for over 20 years. I'm a postal worker and we volunteer answering letters and I've seen it all. There's always sad ones when little kids ask for their dead parent or grandparents or ask to pass a message to their loved ones. There's always a weird adult venting about child support, divorce or money troubles. There was a group of 4 daughters who all asked only that their dads saw back get better. There was a strange kid asking for guns, knives and a lizard. There was one kid who said he's sick of being alone and he was so lonely he offered to become an elf. Last year I got a letter written from a guinea pig and we've had a few from the family dogs, so we treat those extra special. When we get extremely troubling letters they get special attention, especially if the sender is suicidal. If it's something I feel like I can handle myself, then I will usually send a small gift along with an encouraging letter. I send coloring books or crossword puzzles to the stressed people, and I've sent picture frame ornaments for those who have lost a loved one. Baby's first Christmas gets wax sealed calligraphy response appropriate for keepsake. Fortunately I've only gotten a couple of really disturbing letters, but it's becoming more common to get letters from stressed adults. Slightly opposite, but I had a friend who is Russian and who went to a Russian Christmas party, which is a different holiday from normal Christmas apparently, organized by a bunch of Russian families in town. They hired a Santa for all of the kids. My friend is in his last year of college, but everyone tells him to go up to Santa anyway. He's a good sport, so he does. But when he gets up there, Santa dead butt starts chewing him out for flunking a college course and to get better grades. Apparently this was premeditated by the adults ahead of time. I heard this story from him the night of over text when he locked himself in a room and was pee drunk off of vodka. The real St. Nicholas was a badass. He once slapped the Pope and took crap from no one. He was well known for protecting the poor, going so far as to save 3 girls from basically a forced marriage by taking 3 gold coins from an arms box and throwing it into their bedroom window. 1 coin landed in a pair of stockings hung by a fire to dry, which is where the custom of stockings on a fireplace comes from. I actually heard about silent Santas a few years back. Kids with autism don't do malls well. Being autistic myself, I agree. So I rent a suit every year and do a volunteer silent Santa. A family is picked for Christmas and I go over. The room is incredibly dim, but very comfortable for my eyes. Quiet, and it lets the non-verbals meet Santa. I basically do nothing but and don't shave until January because elf. You go in with the parents and the kid meets you. Very soft ho ho ho. Be at their level. They meet. Touch me to see if I'm real. A couple pictures. Usually, getting pictures is difficult with some. It helps the family have some resemblance of a holiday. I was difficult. These kids are far harder, and the parents usually ask Santa questions. I help answer what I can. Basically, since my fam is so far away, and I never get to visit, I bring Christmas to someone else. It also keeps me sane, since the holidays bring out the worst in me. It's $550 for a suit rental, but it makes one Christmas totally awesome for that kid that won't have any more good ones. I knew a gentleman who was a Santa in our local mall for years. He had a real beard, so he was paid more. He didn't tell me any stories of anything that happened that was creepy, rather he said every year there was something interesting that happened. One year he had a guy propose while a girl was on his lap, and another time he said that all the higher ups were checking out the display, and as they were looking away a girl yelled "Hey Santa," and then she flashed him. He was a bit of a ladies' man, so he enjoyed the show. Side story 1. My hubby worked with him as an elf and his buddies thought that was lame, so they walked in there and legit kidnapped him and carried him out like a baby while making fun of him. Side story 2. He told me that he used to work for a children's home and dressed up as the Easter Bunny one year. His office was separate from the children's home and he had to walk along a busy freeway to get to the home. As he's dressed like a freaking bunny and walking along the road, a drunk driver saw him and crashed his car a little ways up the road. This freaked him out, so he walked down the hill to the home for a bit and called 911. As the police were arriving, he heard the driver tell the cops that he saw a freaking huge rabbit. It freaked him out when he saw it and didn't notice where he was going, which led to the crash. Disclaimer: because not a Santa and not creepy, just hoping someone knows my mystery Santa. I know this will get buried, but in 2008 I was living in Columbia City, and when our local firehouse was holding their annual meet and greet with Santa, I was 32 years old sitting on some poor volunteer's lap when he said, "And what would you like for Christmas, young lady?" Mind you, I was just diagnosed with uterine cancer, in a severely abusive marriage from heck. I was overweight and suffering from severe depression. So it took everything I had in me not to break down into tears when I leaned in close and whispered my Christmas wish to this man. I said I would like to see my daddy one more time before I die. I'm over 800 miles away from him right now and haven't seen him in 6 years. So all I want is to see my daddy just one more time. 4 months later I was told I only had 6 to 9 months to live and was issued disability benefits immediately. The first thing I did was get on a train and head back east to see my daddy. I'll be cancer free 5 years next month. I don't know about you, but I feel my little wish was granted. My father passed away 4 years ago yesterday, and I think of that volunteer fireman playing Santa every single Christmas. Not sure if this counts, but my buddy was Santa a few years back at a local shopping center, and this kid came up to him and sat on his lap. Now my friend isn't the tallest or most robust guy out there, so he didn't exactly look like a stereotypical fat Santa. I guess this kid picked up on it and got upset and said all he had wanted for Christmas was to have a good conversation with the real Santa, and that my friend was clearly an imposter. So a few debates later with the kid's parents, and the janitor, who was much more Santa-esque in stature, got dressed up in a spare suit they had, and the kid was satisfied. I did it for a year, many years ago, and never had a creepy one, but one kid really got me when he wished for his dog and brother back. He said they both were hit by a car and both died. Yes, it made me tear up. I was a Santa for my local Special Olympics group. I wish I could remember the count on kids asking to stop being bullied, for me to fix their whatever is wrong with them, i.e. autism, Down syndrome. It's enough to make a grown man cry. I've participated in Shop with a Cop for a few years, and my kids have wanted fairly normal things: bikes, doors, Lego or video games. We get an $80 gift card at Walmart for each child and help them spend it. The barcodes on the items are then marked through so the gifts can't be returned. Most kids and their parents really appreciate it, but occasionally you get a kid who has been coached and you have to gently deprogram them. We're not spending $80 on trashy jewelry for your dad's girlfriend. Anyway, an officer I worked with had a heartbreaker a few years ago. Generally we don't buy gift cards or things that require lots of batteries. We have a bit of leeway though, which can be a very good thing as evidenced here. The child in question wanted a gift card for Steak and Shake. That was it. All the money for Steak and Shake. When asked about it, it turned out that he had figured out the price of a milkshake during their happy hour and figured he could get one a week through the end of the school year if we'd get him the gift card. He was 9 and looked 6. He ended up with a pretty decent gift card. I hope he was able to use it the way he planned. My dad plays Santa every year for a bunch of corporate parties and our local version of Ronald McDonald House. They take a bunch of sick kids on a flight with Santa on a corporate jet. According to him, the absolutely most heartbreaking part of it is when little kids who are basically in hospice care ask Santa to make them better for Christmas. Second place is seeing all different kids every year, cause none of them ever live long enough to go twice. Men of Reddit, what have you purposefully done to not seem creepy? I had been walking behind her about 2 blocks, going to a parking garage. When I got to the garage I pulled the ticket out of my pocket to pretend to compare the address and to give her time to get ahead, but we met at the elevator. We got off the elevator at the same floor on the parking garage, and she headed to where I knew my car was. So I wandered around the parking garage pushing the button on my remote, pretending to look for my car. She finally yelled it's up his way. We were parked next to each other. They married last year and have 3 kids. I have a really good memory and remember most of the details from most of the conversations I had if I'm paying attention. It gets creepy when a guy you haven't seen in months regurgitates your life story, so I have to act like I forgot everything and ask questions I already know the answer to. If a guy remembers something I tell him I'm impressed. Even more so if time has passed. It showed they care. Emo at least. I was walking down the street and 2 young girls, around 8 or 9, came skipping up to me and asked if I wanted to see their dance routine for $1. I gave them $1 and said I didn't have time to watch their dance. I felt weird being an adult male in my late 20s watching 2 adolescent girls dance on the sidewalk with nobody else around. I can only imagine what that would look like from someone's kitchen window. That's pretty funny though. Kids are so cute. I'm sure they were extremely excited about the $1. I walked up to a group of moms with their kids in a park and told them I was geocaching, which is like a treasure hunting game. And if I'm walking in circles looking at things I was trying to find something, not stalking anyone. The day before, I was at the same park doing the same thing, minding my own business. Someone decided they didn't like me walking around and called the police on me. Didn't blame them. I felt bad for the cop who had to write the report on the situation though. The officer was really nice and I made it a point to laugh and talk with the officer for about 10 minutes just because. Funny thing, when I told the group of moms the second day, I ended up with 3 adults, about 6 kids, and a dog helping me try to find it. LOL. Funny thing, when I told the group of moms the second day, I ended up with 3 adults, about 6 kids, and a dog helping me try to find it. LOL. Yay. I naturally walk pretty softly, so I generally make very little noise when I'm walking around. So if I notice that I'm walking near a girl, or even a group of girls, especially at night, I'll purposefully make a little noise just to basically announce my presence. Drag my feet, clear my throat, something like that, just to be like, hey, I'm here, don't freak out. I just scream as loud as I can to announce my presence and assert my dominance at the same time. When I see an attractive woman I ignore her. Can't think I'm creepy if I don't acknowledge your existence. Obviously a flawed strat, but it works. My strategy as well. I look in the opposite direction to appear aloof and uninterested. Probably come off as a prick, but that's better than a creeper. If I'm walking down a street behind a woman, either cough or pretend to trip so she knows I'm there. I'll also either slow down or just take a different route across the street. I'm gonna point out that that's legit. When guys follow too long behind me, I start looking for a reason to not be walking in front of him. If I'm walking behind a girl at night and she can't hear me, I'll slow down so I'm not as close, cough, and then speed past her. It usually works, except on the rare occasion that we both then turn into the same building, and then it just looks I just intentionally got in her way. When I go camping with my better half, I always make sure she comes to the campsite toilets with me so I don't look like a creepy weirdo. To clarify, I do this because I usually take those opportunities to observe and photograph moths that have been attracted to the lights, and nothing says creepy weirdo louder than a lone adult male loitering at some family campsite toilets with a camera after dark. Hahaha, oh my god. Yep, that would absolutely weird me out. Just murmur softly, moths are drawn to the light. Anyone questions you and do not blink. It'll be great. I'm 32, was playing a light gun game at an arcade, one where you sit down and there are little curtains to make it darker. A kid got in and pretended to play. I noped right out of there. Better to lose my 75 cents than to have to explain to the parent, or cops, that I was there first. If I'm giving a stranger or someone I don't know terribly well a compliment, I up the gay in my voice so they know I'm not hitting on them. I just really think their hair, makeup, shoes, whatever are cool. I'm trying to decide if you're a straight guy trying to pretend you're gay so the girls don't get defensive, or if you're a gay guy trying to make that more obvious. And I don't know which is funnier, haha. I'm a tall, broad fellow. Walking home drunk one night, I realized there was a lady walking ahead of me alone. So I shouted, "I'm not an attacker, I just live in this direction," really loudly. She laughed and said something I don't remember and we both kept walking. Slow down so that I'm not walking right behind a girl or woman who might be creeped out about some guy close behind her. It's appreciated, especially if it's dark out. Was walking back to my hotel drunk after the bars closed. Was on an empty street when a young lady started walking in my direction. I moved to the fair side of the sidewalk so she could pass easily. She then decides to stop and talk to me for a few minutes. I often take off my sunglasses so it's clear where I'm looking. For example, when our dogs are meeting each other on the trail. My ex and I were at a club. She had to use the restroom and found the place a little creepy, so she wanted me to stay close to the entrance. So I'm there, looking like a creepy dude in a creepy part of a club right outside the women's restroom. I just got my phone out and played a game on it. Women going to the bathroom generally don't want to be the focus of some random dude at that moment, so I focused my attention on my phone. TBH, guys standing outside women's bathrooms, I 100% always assume they're waiting for their daughter or wife, girlfriend. Of the 4 adjustable benches in the gym, if a girl is using one, I will apply men's room rules and select the furthest bench possible, always a buffer of at least one. My fear of being creepy pretty much keeps me from approaching women entirely. Pretty pathetic, lol. When watching P, I keep a tab open with some random news site or whatever, in case somebody walks in. Of course, one time my roommate did walk in, and I was sitting there supposedly reading headline about some woman who got raped, and all of a suddenly, one of those talking ads comes on from the P tab. "Oh, baby, you really wanna stick it in me, don't you?" Roommate was like, "Wow, those news websites are really immersive." I'm not sure having your pants down in front of a news article about rape is any better. I've refrained from asking people out at work. 99/100 I know they are being nice and pleasant because it's work, but every now and then it's so obviously clear they would say yes, but I don't ask. I just generally avoid flirting with any girl I meet. There are only 4 scenarios. Scenario A, she's your server or cashier or whatever, and you shouldn't flirt because she can't get away. Scenario B, you're her server or cashier or whatever, and you shouldn't flirt with her because she might complain to your boss. Scenario C, both you and she are working, possibly at the same job, and flirting would be inappropriate and potentially lead to awkwardness. Scenario D, neither of you are working, and there's really no basis for you to be talking to her at all. There are exceptions of course, but they're few and far between. This exactly explains why I have no friends, male or female. As a 6 foot tall, 240 pounds white dude that drives Uber Lyft, I am always respectful to all of my passengers, but I really try to seem non-threatening when I have a female passenger by herself. I greet everyone when they get in, verify their destination, and let them continue the conversation if they so choose. If they say nothing else, neither do I. Also, whenever I drop off a female at night, I stay parked in front of their house until they get the door open, then I drive away. I'd feel awful if I saw on the news that one of my packs was assaulted. Very unlikely, I know, but still. I once dropped off a woman whose father was in the car, but he was getting dropped off at another destination. I waited, like I usually do, and he was very appreciative of the gesture. It's something that I would appreciate for my wife, daughter, mother if in a similar situation. When I owned a car I did this for all my friends, not just my female ones. Don't talk to women. My anxiety tells me that anything I say is creepy because I don't know how to talk to women. So, I just subtract myself from the equation and boom. Can't be creepy if you don't interact with them. Taps Temple. It was a hot day in a southern city, scorching and humid, at least 98 degrees. There was a large public fountain designed for people to splash in and run through. Was with my girl at the time and we were both soaked in sweat. The water looked amazing. Only thing was there were about 24 moms and their kids also running through the water. Even though it was hot, and even though it was a public space, and even though I was with my GF, I refused to go running through the fountain. A grown man skipping alongside children in the water, while actually showing I'm really just a kid in a grown body, would have seemed especially creepy. I used to take my son and daughter to the park. My son is autistic, so I tend to watch closely and follow around while standing off to the side. Apparently this freaked out one of the other moms, who had her husband come over to check me out. I lived on a co-ed floor with gender-neutral bathrooms for a semester. This included showers. It had stalls. I was one of 3 guys and 18 women. If I saw a woman in the bathroom, fine, but I would never follow a girl in, especially if they were heading to the showers. Big ol' bag of nope. This is why I'm against gender-neutral bathrooms. I'd never use one if there was a woman I beat because I don't want to look creepy and I'm super awkward around women. Got into the elevator with some girl living in the same condo I lived in late at night. Saw her press the same floor I lived on, so I pressed a different floor to get off at. And obviously just to drive the point home I yelled I am not creepy as she left the elevator horrified and very creeped out. That's when you say, oh, I live on the same floor. Then stand as close to the door as possible to make sure you get off first. At least, that's what I'd do. Kept staring at someone while zoning out, so it didn't seem like I was intentionally staring by looking away immediately. I just always look down, because I'm worried that I'll end up accidentally staring at someone. I tend to try not to speak to cute girls I see in public. I figure that attractive women get approached all the time to the point to where it's just annoying to them, and I don't want to be +1 to the list of thirsty dudes, so I just keep it moving. Frustrating part is the kinds of guys who think like this are the types I would want to approach me and get to know. Instead I get weird poos and aggressive buttholes. This happened to me a few years ago. My 11-year-old daughter was attending a visual arts class at a high school in our city. Several of her classmates, mostly girls, were also attending, so the parents had worked out a carpool system. It was only later that I realized I was the only male parent involved. After the mom on duty had picked up the girls and left, I got a group email response from one of the other moms in the group. She had planned on taking her own daughter but had misjudged the time and was asking if anyone else could help. I replied back that the other mom had already left and probably wouldn't be back for at least 45 minutes, but I said I could do it as she lived only a few blocks away. She thanked me and sent me her address and phone number. I sent her a text message back with my face picture so that she could send it to her daughter, so she could recognize me when I went to get her. I got a text message back. Oh my god. I was confused. I replied back, is there something wrong? I know it's not a super flattering picture, but I haven't had my coffee today. No response. I waited a few minutes, then texted again. Is everything okay? I'm about to head over to your place. No response. I went over to the address she sent and knocked on the door. The daughter was home alone but was getting ready to leave for the class. I introduced myself as my daughter's father and that I would wait in the car. A few minutes later she came out and we started driving. We had only gone to the corner when the girl said, "Hey, that's my neighbor." There was a woman waving frantically at us from the sidewalk. I pulled over to see what she wanted. She told the girl that her mom was on her way home and that she would take her to class. I was like, okay, whatever. It was nice to meet you. She got out and I drove home. I found out later that the girl never went to the class. Her mom wasn't on her way home. Apparently because I am a man I cannot be trusted, even by someone who asked me to help them. I sent a message to the mom later saying that I was incredibly offended by her actions. She offered some mealy-mouthed apology about just not wanting to send her daughter off alone. I felt awful about myself for the rest of the weekend until I realized something. Some people are always going to assume the worst about you no matter what. That is on them. They carry that crap around with them. If they try to lay it on me, I don't have to pick it up. We created a new carpool group that did not include her and the rest of the year went fine. It should go without saying, If someone is going to diddle your kids, it's going to be family. Statistically, I'm not an expert though. I'm glad things worked out well, especially as a fellow male who may someday be in your shoes. If I'm alone in a room with a woman I don't know, doctor's lobby, fast food joint, convenience store, I'll pull out my phone and browse Reddit so she doesn't think I'm checking her out or anything. I do this primarily because I was called out for it once before when I was really just lost in thought with the 1,000-yard stare, and the clerks at the CVS looked at me like I was some kind of scumbag. So frick social interaction, I'll be on my phone. I'm a 6 feet 3 inches 210 pounds white guy. When I shave my head, I wear bright colors and skinny jeans for a week or two until I stop looking like a white supremacist. I'm 6 feet 0 inches and 200. I shave my head for a skin condition. I'm currently growing my beard out so I can braid it like a Viking. Vikings aren't white supremacists. They just like killing everyone who has good loot. At the gym I will avoid racks and machines next to attractive promiscuously dressed females. I don't want to look like that guy trying to creep. I'll literally use a rack that sucks and has no mirror. Keep my hands to myself, keep my thoughts to myself, keep my emotions to myself, and just stick to the conversation without changing topic. You sound like a girl I was dating for a few months. Take extra care not to get touchy, especially if I've been drinking, since it has been called to my attention that I get that way when I'm about half in the bag. I'll cough or make a loud sound if I'm walking behind a female, to let them know I'm not trying to be sneaky or anything, and to also alert them that I'm behind them so they should stop hogging the entire freaking sidewalk so I can pass. It's appreciated also. I scuff my feet to make people freaking move as well. Go team. It's a frequent occurrence that I stand instead of taking the last free seat on the bus, because a meek looking woman is sitting next to it. Keep a distance, occasionally crossing the street. I also have intentionally shifted my mannerisms in a stereotypically flamboyant direction. IMB, and I find that women, and their boyfriends, are less threatened when I shift my posture, use different vocabulary, and pronounce words in a particular manner. Yes, I pump the gay pedal a bit with women I'm just having casual conversations with, and everyone can relax. Feels so much better when you know you're no longer considered a threat. Sprinkle in some good old-fashioned southern boy charm and customers of all ages and genders eat that crap up when I'm slinging coffee at work. One time me and my girlfriend were at a park and has an extra ice cream sandwich. She said, "Oh, why don't you go give it to those kids over there?" Listen. I was in the tram today and there was a girl talking to her sister. It was about an accident or something that happened to a friend, a day before she learned that her husband had an affair, and another day before her grandma died. The conversation started about that, then turned to a well-mannered argument between her and her sister about something. Then it turned even more depressing because the topic changed to them not seeing each other a lot and stuff. It's hard to explain, but from the way she talked and stuff it sounded like her sister was her parent figure in her life. They also didn't talk about their actual parents at all and stuff. You know how some people have a resting B face? Well, she had a resting sad face. The face you have when you get reminded of something sad, or you know something sad was gonna happen and you learn that it just happened. She also looked like she was on the verge of crying during most of the conversation. I mean, she was pretty hot and totally my type, I just realized. But at the time all I wanted to do is hug the frick out of her and let her cry it out and stuff. I don't know. I was basically choking in her sadness. I felt so bad and sad. I still feel bad for her and really sad. My entire day has been kind of down now because of her, but I don't blame her and don't mind it. Well, my stop came and I was resisting the urge to hug her and stuff because that would be awkward as frick. A 16-year-old kid hugging this 24-year-old woman in the tram and they don't know each other. All I did was awkwardly ask if she could move her legs a little bit. There were 4 seats next to her and opposed to each other, so a 2x2 seat place thing. I didn't have enough room to walk out of it to leave the tram because her legs were in the way. I totally didn't do the part where I explained why I feel sad for her. Justice, but oh well. Something kinda strange to think about, but not all that strange to do is not to hug her but to say something simple. Doesn't have to be encouraging, but just say something kinda nice or show some sort of empathy. I no longer compliment any woman on her appearance or mention appearance at all. I no longer initiate conversation with women and minimize it when it happens. I keep a good physical distance from women. I try not to overtly look at women. I cross the street if a woman is walking towards me and I can do so. I'm a 23-year-old male who is a leader at a church youth group. I'm one of the leaders who knows and is friends with just about all of the kids. The other week we went to the pool. On this week a lot of our guy regulars weren't there, so most of the kids we had there were girls. A few of the kids were playing tag in the pool, and one of the 9th grade girls who I am good friends with asked me to play, which I declined. However, she kept persisting, and even got a bunch of the other kids to harass me into playing. When the others were gone, I ended up pulling her aside and telling her that it looks bad if a 23-year-old guy is playing tag with a bunch of teenage girls, mostly in bikinis, at the pool, and she seemed to get it, and didn't push anything like that again, which is a relief. I don't know if it's necessarily a man thing, but I try to keep my hands visible at all times in public. Like, I'll hold my phone up with one hand, but not so much that it looks like I'm taking pictures, and let my other swing a bit more than it would naturally while I'm walking, just so nobody thinks I'm reaching for anything or something like that. I especially do this in stores. I like resting my hands in my pockets, but I don't want people to think I'm hiding anything. I tried. When I was 21-22 I was at a bar. Drunk girl walking by slips on a drink spilt on the ground. I catch her but my hand is on her boob. Tried to quickly correct and move my hand arm to her stomach. Unfortunately, she's wearing a halter top, shirt with no straps, and I ended up pulling her top down. She then stayed on her knees to pull it up as I applied my palm directly to face. Drinks were on me the rest of the night cause I felt guilt. I work at a college, and when I become friendly with an attractive female student, about every third time I see her around campus, I will totally ignore her. I hate that. As a guy, I must always live on tenterhooks because someone might think I'm being creepy. Usually, if you're trying to not be creepy, you end up being creepy. The best advice I've been given is to just go for it and say whatever you want. The next best piece of advice I've been given is to not take advice from girls on how to hit on girls. Their advice will frick you over. I never engage conversations with women and avoid standing or sitting next to them unless invited, so to not give the impression I'm trying to flirt. The less attractive you are, the more careful you need to be. Women of Reddit, what was your worst run-in with a creep? I was 12 years old, on a public bus, and wearing my sailor-esque Catholic schoolgirl uniform. As I was standing near the back door waiting to get off at my stop, a small, greasy-looking adult man sidled up too close to me. He had a smarmy little smile on his face. I was so confused as to why he was standing that close, that for a few seconds I didn't notice his hand cupping my butt. Fortunately we were pulling up to my stop, so once I got over the shock of my situation, I hollered "Don't touch me" and jumped off the bus. Since that day I've always been very aware of my personal space, and have no problem telling people to back off if they are making me feel uncomfortable. Creepy people who prey on little kids are the worst. A guy at my university followed me around for about 15 years. I have a unique surname. There used to be a way for students to use Pine to find out who else was logged in and where on campus. He would use that command and show up in the computer lab and sit next to me. He looked me up in the phone book and showed up at my parents' house. After a restraining order, you would think it was done right? Wrong. I was speaking at an international conference in another country. Guess who was sitting in the front row? This was a conference for a very niche scientific field that he was definitely not part of. A few years later, I was at an alumni event with my husband. My husband left the table to go to the washroom. Guess who sat down the second he left? Police were called. It's been a few years since the last incident. Still paranoid. What the frick? I'm so sorry this happened to you for so long. You'd think that sucker would learn to have a life. When I was 12 and just starting to develop, a guy, maybe in his late 20s, told me "Your titties are coming along nicely." I was so freaked out. I was about 10 and went to the local package store with my dad. The mail clerk said, "Oh, look at your cute little titties." My dad didn't say anything. While standing outside a bar, having a cigarette, A friend of a friend kept bugging me to go home with him. He had tried this on multiple occasions but it wasn't going to happen. Ever. I told him as much and his response was, come on. If you frick me tonight, I promise I won't even be racist and I'll make you toast after. For context, we are both white. I guess he assumed I valued anti-racist attitudes and toast, which is true. But, weird sell, dude. The both white thing really got me LMAO. My friend and I were 16 and wandering around at a Sephora in the mall, just swatching eyeshadow and highlighter on our wrists. He was the only guy in the store, and I only vaguely noticed him in the same aisle as us just before we paid. It didn't ring any alarm bells for me whatsoever, because why should it? We picked up our highlighter and went to pay. The girl at the register rung up our items, leaned over and said quietly, that guy followed you two into the store and has been watching you in each aisle. I'm going to give you your bags, and go ask him if he needs any help. You two need to get as far away as possible. If you see him follow you outside of the store, go talk to security. She handed us our bags, gestured at the door, and walked up to him as we ran out. I hope she gets all the good things in this life. That's a goddamn hero right there. There was a guy in my hometown that would wait outside the high school, with the door to his Corvette open, hoping a girl would get in. I lived in the middle of nowhere. To get to my house I had to walk over a mile, on a one-lane dirt road, winding through a forest. One day as the school bus was approaching my laneway to drop me off, the Corvette guy was waiting in my laneway, with his door open. The bus driver wouldn't let me off the bus. He continued to the next drop and told me to go to that house and call my parents to pick me up. This was in the days before cell phones existed. That is a good bus driver. I unfortunately have a few stories, but this is one that tops the list. I'm a bartender and one night I was serving 3 men who work at an Italian restaurant nearby. I was offered a job, which I politely declined. They were my last patrons. I closed out their tab, finished my side work and had a busboy walk me to my car. As the busboy left in his own car, this black Porsche SUV blocks me in my spot. The window is rolled down and I realize it's the owner of the Italian restaurant. He asks if I want to go home with him. I decline. He asks if the busboy was my boyfriend and I lied and said yes. He scoffed and sped off. I hurry and leave to head home. As I pull into my parking spot at my house, I see the same SUV drive by. I woke up my neighbor who was a military guy, and he said he'd keep an eye out. That night I found the guy's name online, his Facebook profile, his business profile, his wife's profile and his phone number. I took screenshots and sent them all to him telling him not to harass me or I'll retaliate. I never heard from him again. Lesson learned. Always pay attention to your surroundings while driving home. Ugh. Creeps. Also I hate that they think it's okay to harass you if you're single but not if you are someone else's property. When I was 18, my friend and I were driving home around 3 AM and we stopped by a gas station to get a snack. We hop out of the car and immediately this guy nearby call out to me, saying brunette, white jacket. He asks my name. I give him a fake one, and my friend and I go into the store. We decided to wait in there until he drove away, but 15 minutes later he was still there. Eventually he comes into the store, looks around for us, and approaches me. The guy looked to be around 25-30. He smelled of cigarettes and I backed up closer to my friend, but he took a step forward and proceeded to ask me for my number, saying I was cute, etc. I lied and told him I was a minor, to which he respected and backed off. He then says, "Good to know, maybe next time," and leaves. We watch their car drive away and only leave about 5 minutes after we were sure he was gone. We left the store and got into the car. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I saw his car pulled over on the side of the road. We drove past it and I watched as the car turned on and started following us. I begged my friend to take the long way home, because I didn't want to let him to my house and because the long way passes by a fire station that I would have gone to for help, had they followed us that far. Eventually we lose sight of the car, go home, and I never saw him or the car again. Jesus. It's good that you were with your mate. The fact that so many of these stories talks about much older men harassing young girls terrifies me. In 5th grade, after ballet practice, I was only wearing shorts and a jacket over my dance clothes, leotard and tights, and standing in a Chipotle line. Some old dude was behind me and asking me about my phone. According to my mother, he was looking at my body, scanning it up and down. Even before I found that out, he gave me the creeps. When we left, he rushed to pick up his order and ran out the door after us and followed us home. He stopped following at the last turn. I had trouble sleeping. Was walking down the sidewalk and a guy whistled at me from his car. I ignored him and kept waking. He revved his engine loudly and ran his car up on the sidewalk, missing me by a couple of feet. I was 12. Geez, that's messed up, especially to a 12-year-old. The most memorable was when I was sitting in my parents' front garden, on the swing. Reading. The way everything is laid out with the trees and whatnot, you can barely see the swing deck BBQ area from any perspective that's not from the front door. Very private spot. Anyway, I was just sitting there reading when I hear someone walking up. Assume it's a family member because how would it not be? Someone plops down on the swing next to me, throws an arm around me, and it's some freaking guy. Says some stuff, tries to move closer and proceeds to attempt to keep me from leaving when I get up. I go there, practically sprint back to the house and tell my dad what just happened and that there's some butthole in our garden being completely gross at me. He just laughs and says, "Oh, that's just new across the street neighbor. Be nice." The frick. Over the next couple years, shithead would go on to make me and my older, only occasionally visiting, sisters super uncomfortable any chance he got. Long stories. And his poor, bit large and angry, dog was always loose in the neighborhood and murdering other people's pets. That mother still makes my blood boil. I'm so sorry. I wrote my story down below, and when I told my siblings what had happened, I got a similar response. Kind of disbelief disregard that made me think I was making a big deal out of nothing. It really kept me from doing anything. I'm so sorry your dad didn't have your back either. I was 21 in a strange city and got separated from my friend at a bar. I was drunk and wanted to go back to the hotel, so as I'm leaving, this guy who had been sitting near me all night followed and got in my cab with me and closed the door. Again, I was very drunk, so had to think quickly and stay as calm as possible. He tried to talk to me and I just nodded and made small talk. I didn't know if rejection would turn him violent, so I played along the best I could. After telling the driver where to take me, the whole time this guy is moving closer and touching me. So as soon as the car stopped, I got out, ran into the hotel lobby where I knew this man would be following me, and screamed to the hotel security and desk employees, "I do not know this man. He is following me." And they took it from there. That was smart to make it clear you didn't know him. Lord knows what would have happened if you hadn't made a scene. Probably the guy at a bar who pinned me against a wall and told me not going home with him wasn't an option. On the plus side, I got to sprint into a cab, slam the door, and exclaim "just drive." So that was cool. Always nice to get some fun out of traumatic incidents. I was walking my dog and made the mistake of not rushing home once it got dark. A man in a baseball cap and oversized jacket blocked my path to comment how pretty my dog was and how I must take good care of him. I smiled tightly and thanked him, told him to have a good day and nodded and went to go around him. So he naturally grabbed my arm and said, "Yeah, I bet you take real good care of anything you have. You married?" I lied and said yes. He let me go but followed me home. I wound up calling my boyfriend to come pick me up. A guy who stays regularly at the hotel I work in, all the female staff know to avoid getting caught alone with him. He has a habit of asking us if we know of any adult fun nearby. If you just act like you don't know what he's talking about, he'll say he wants to go to brothels and have a good time without his wife. He'll then progress to offering you various amounts of money for the night and asking you what you like in bed and what you'd be willing to do. He developed such an obsession with one of our staff before she left that security would walk round with her when he stayed because he'd followed her out to her car at one point making suggestive comments. Got stuck alone with him once as I was behind the counter and he stood blocking the only way out from behind it. He started the usual chat and I told him I wasn't interested. He then moved on to asking me what time I finished, if I lived nearby, if I walked home alone. My male co-worker turned up then, but he creeped on me from a distance the rest of the day and watched me leave. I have no doubt he will assault someone one day. Hotel won't ban him because he regularly spends money. The fact that they won't kick him out is irritating. A guy saw me in the metro and thought I was cute, which meant he had to follow me on my 5 kilometers walk home to my flat in the middle of the night. He introduced himself to me as I was about to put in the key to my door. That's crazy. Wouldn't know what to do next. Continue opening the door or just go somewhere else. Weird Larry lived in my dorm. He unsuccessfully hit on all the girls, which is why he was Weird Larry. It totally ruined his self-esteem. One night, Larry just showed up and invited himself into my room. I was not fully clothed. He took this as an invitation and climbed up into my bunk bed. I asked him to get down, and he asked me to come up there with him so we could have sex. When I refused, he took some quarters out of his pocket, put them on my nightstand and said, "What if I paid you? You could do your laundry." I told him that wasn't enough change to do a full load of laundry, and he started crying and getting snot all over my pillow. I had to go wake up the road person in charge of the dorm and have him escorted out. Then he wouldn't stop sending me messages. They became more desperate until they became threats at rape. I saved the messages and used them to file a restraining order. A few other girls wanted in on it, so Weird Larry was evicted from his own dormitory and had to drop out of school. TLDR. Came into my dorm room uninvited, then gave me some quarters and told me he was paying me for sex. Then he cried when I said no. Wound up needing a restraining order. Similar story here. He scooted into my dorm room kinda like how the Grinch slinks on the floor when he's stealing all the Christmas decorations. I'm dumb though and didn't press charges, etc. When I delivered pizzas and I was 18, this guy asked me if I wanted to step in while he grabbed his money. It was cold and rainy, so I took him up on the offer. He ended up trying to keep me there till his mom got home because he didn't have enough for the pizza. He tried to force me into a pyramid scheme and kept making uncomfortable comments about me. I had left my phone in my car so I couldn't text my manager to call me to give me an out because no matter how hard I tried to leave, this guy would find some way to block my path. I took off when he went to the bathroom and told my manager about what happened. Females weren't allowed to deliver to him anymore. We eventually found out he was a convicted sex offender too. Normally I find an out and I always have an escape plan, but I put myself in a position where I couldn't give myself an escape. I went on to manage deliver pizzas for several years, but after that day I implemented a new rule, which was never enter anyone's home unless I knew who it was. I'd stand in the pouring rain any day over entering a stranger's home. I come from a safe low crime area, but my gut instinct that night was that I was in danger. When I was 16, I went to Walmart with some of my siblings. I broke off to go look in the shoe section for some sandals, and as I turned a corner I almost ran into this guy. Very nondescript, wearing the jumper most guys who worked at the plants near there wore. For some reason I immediately got a really bad feeling, panicked, and turned around and went to the nearest other section. Took a few minutes to calm down enough to realize that it was the baby section and that I was staring at an infant bouncer for which I had no use. I laughed at myself, put it down to how anxious and socially awkward I was, and then turned around to go back to the shoe section. I then realized that guy was now in the baby section and that bad feeling came back. What were the odds he actually needed something there? I fled to the women's clothing section, thinking that there was no reason he would appear there. I was shaking, pretending to look at things and telling myself that I was being ridiculous, when he came up behind me and grabbed my behind so hard his fingers got places I wish they hadn't and whispered something in my ear. He immediately walked away before I could do anything. I listen to those bad feelings now. Frankly, I consider myself extremely lucky. I also really wish I could remember what he said, but everything was kind of roaring and went blurry. I was so panicked. Walmart is the worst creeps. My little cousin and I got followed by a man around the store. I was 16, she was 13. I took 4 left turns around the store after I noticed he was tailing us to find out he was following. Luckily, a man at one of the checkout lines stopped him and started talking to him long enough for us to leave. Really sorry that happened to you. Made eye contact with a guy across the street. Smiled at him to be polite. He followed me home without me realizing it and spent the next few days stalking me, following me when I left the house, leaving notes on my front door, etc. Had to get the cops involved. That's sad and infuriating. A random smile can literally brighten an entire day for someone. It's so wholesome and sweet, but for a person to take that and corrupt it into something so sinister and disgusting. SMH. When I was 13, a 50-something-year-old man said in front of my mother that if I ever misbehaved he would give me a spanking. Kinda out of the blue. Then when her attention was averted he kinda snuck a hug for a few seconds too long. Nothing super crazy but hella awkward. I had an old friendly Gramps type of neighbor tell me I was gonna be a good looking chick one day as he caressed my cheek and ran his thumb over my lips. In front of my mother. I was 9. My mom pulled me back. Gave him a death look. Then we left immediately. Good mom. And frick him. 15-year-old me went shopping and felt a weird touch when I was browsing books. Didn't think anything of it. Then again another touch. Turned around to see a grown butt man trying to touch me up in public in the middle of the day in a bookshop. I was so scared. I just stood there staring at him. Me, now, would have done it differently. Also a guy approached me at the school gates, maybe 14, and followed me down the roads, but finally left when I wouldn't get into his car. City living can be scary at times. I've met many creeps, but the one that immediately came to mind is the dude that put his hand down the front of my pants at a concert. He tried to play it off like it was an accident. Things get pretty crowded in the pit, so it's not like there's any personal space, but hand down my pants, there's no way that's an accident. He was with who I presume was his girlfriend, and when I turned around to be like WTF she glared at me like I was trying to hit on him. So yeah, probably the guy that sexually assaulted me in front of his girlfriend. I was a moron and took a drink after walking in a club from a guy. Hadn't had one other drink. Drank it, tasted like Jaeger. 20 minutes later started freaking out to my friend, apparently saying there was someone watching us. We hurriedly went to my car, which was manual, so she couldn't drive it. I shifted and she steered. For some reason we never called the cops. We apparently were running stoplights and took interstate, and this guy was following us. We got back to her neighborhood and ran inside as he walked around outside. I fell asleep talking, pee on myself, and couldn't be woken up. She violently shook me, trying to wake me, but I didn't budge. She finally got me awake about 6 hours later to my alarm going off for work. I woke up, 6 AM, got dressed, went to my car and wrecked it by running into a bridge. I don't remember anything after 20 minutes of taking the drink. I still wonder to this day why we just didn't call the cops. Maybe because I was underage. I smiled at a guy I passed in the park, as I do everyone I pass. He immediately turned around and followed me, but not before he began masturbating with his entire dong and balls out of his shorts. I was waiting near a bus stop after college. I was 17 or 18 at the time, and some guy came up to me and started talking to me as if he knew me. He kept saying sorry, and he was clearly not all there on something. I kept moving away and he just followed. He pinned me against the wall I was leaning on and wouldn't leave me alone. I finally got away and sat in the bus stop, and he came and sat next to me. As I stood up to get on the bus, I've never been so happy to see a bus in my life. He grabbed my butt. The worst thing about all this is that there were about 5 or 6 people at the bus stop. Adults, men and women, all saw this happening and didn't do anything to help me. I talked to him for 2 minutes at a welcome icebreaker game when university first started. A few months later, I decided to not go to university anymore and to move in with my parents. I had not seen him since the game. He contacted not me but the priest of our village. He told him I had a special aura and he needed me around. He drove 2 hours to say that to my priest. Thank God the priest did not like that and called me and offered to call the cops. It still haunts me how much he must have found of me online research to know where I live and that I was religious. I definitely did not tell him that. Really weird. That's a good priest. 14 years old and alone on the subway. Man sits in a seat across from me, spreads his legs and starts masturbating through his pants while staring me straight in the eyes. I was getting ready to jump up and run out at the next stop. An older gentleman suddenly appeared, stood directly in front of me like a shield and stared the guy down. At the next stop he pointed to the door and made him get off. I hope I said thank you, but I was in shock. So thank you, dear man who protected me and made me feel safe. What a nice man. When I was 16 I would walk to college once a week to keep fit, as it was an hour away. One day I had only just set off and I was accosted by a guy on a bike that wouldn't leave me alone. I was really shy and anxious, so I tried to be friendly. but he wouldn't leave me alone. He finally said he'd go away if I gave him my number, and I didn't feel like I could say no, so I gave it to him to get him to bugger off and just thought I'd ignore his calls. Fast forward to later in the day and I had to shut my phone off cause he was calling and texting so much. He was sending texts saying that he loved me. When I turned the phone back on, I had 100 missed calls and nearly as many texts. It only stopped after about a week of this. It seriously made me nervous for a long time because he'd originally accosted me so close to my house, and I was scared that he'd see me again and follow me, but I never saw him again. When you give your phone number to someone you don't want to, change the last digit. This way, you sound natural and don't stutter and can repeat it so he has the feeling it's true. So, last year I got a flat tire on a semi-busy road right when a snowstorm started. Since I had AAA, I figured I would use one of my roadside assistants to have them replace the tire with a spare that I had, and I wouldn't have to go outside since I forgot gloves. While I was waiting, a mid-40s early 50s man came up to my window and asked if I needed help. Thinking that he was just a good Samaritan at the time, I thanked him but told him, no, I was just waiting for AAA. Now, if he left here, I would have a nice story about a guy willing to help me with a car problem. Instead, he gets downright pushy. He lives nearby. I can just take my car there and change it's in his garage. Why don't I just stay in his house until AAA comes? I kept telling him no until he starts yelling, and I rolled up the window and he starts pounding on it. Eventually he left when the AAA guy came, but I still took a very long and circuitous route home. Stay inside, lock the doors and honk the horn like and they usually go away. I have worked nights all my life and the amount of men that will approach a lone woman in a car is scary. I was 19, worked at a main library in my city, with several floors and an elevator. I was taking a book truck. The library guard got on. As soon as the door closed he cornered me and kissed me. He was at least 40 and much bigger than me. I never got on an elevator alone with him again, nor with anyone else that I didn't know. Now I see why elevators need cameras. I hope you're doing better, RN. Not the worst, but a random old man on the street asked if I was a virgin when I was like 17, although I look more like 14. This happened to me when I was 10, on my way to school. I was walking down an empty street and an older guy ran across the street towards me and started asking all kinds of dirty questions about my private part and whether I was a virgin. I almost had a panic attack right at the spot. Con-goers and cosplayers, what are your cringiest and creepiest con experiences? Our first year tabling in the artist's alley at an anime con, there was this girl, probably 15-16, that wouldn't leave us alone. If you've ever tabled at a con or hung out with artist's alley people, you know the type, uninterested in what you're selling, just happy to have a captive audience so they can drone on and on about their project that they're never actually going to write down but it's all there in their head. Will never take the hint that it's time to leave. She saw that we did commissions, and so she asked if we did NSW commissions. My artist isn't super comfortable drawing that kind of material, and she clearly looked underage, so we said no. She proceeded to keep needling us about it, and seemed to notice that it made us uncomfortable. Well, this is clearly a reaction, which is all she's after. So she keeps on requesting increasingly fricked up commissions that we do our best to ignore while we desperately try to start a conversation with anybody else that will come within 10 feet of our table. By the time she's done, she has decided she really wants my artist friend to draw her the kids from Grave of the Fireflies fricking each other, and also one of them is eating the other one's intestines. Eventually she decided she was bored and left. What makes this interaction stick out from other encounters with booth barnacles for me is the guy that was with her, around the same age, never said a word the whole time, but I could see in his eyes that he was deeply embarrassed by this girl's behavior and really just wanted to leave. I could just read the saddest short story in that kid's expression. He'd found the one girl in his social circle that was into anime, and he was too socially awkward to realize that just because someone's into the same geeky crap as you doesn't mean that they're not going to be absolutely insufferable to be around. In retrospect, I really wanted to take that young man aside and just say, I don't know you, I don't know your life, but I'm just gonna say right now, you can do better. Run. Cringiest. My husband cosplayed as Darth Vader around the time Ep 7 came out. He was very popular because he's 6 feet 4 inches and built like a linebacker. Lots of requests for pictures. This guy who looked like he lived in his mother's basement came up dressed as a Jedi. And by Jedi I mean he was wearing a bathrobe and carrying an expensive looking lightsaber prop. He wanted to be recorded fighting Darth Vader, so he hands me his camera, didn't even ask, takes his stance, and proceeds to have an aggressive lightsaber duel with my husband, where most people took about 15 seconds to get their poses photographed. This guy dueled for about 2 minutes. My stomach was in knots the whole time from the awkwardness. Darth husband eventually had to force choke him to end it. This is the cringe I've been looking for. I used to sell art in the artist alley at local cons, and I never got to walk around too much since I had to watch over my table. But the people who come up to you can be plenty creepy and cringy. I had one lady come up to me while I was drawing and go on a rant about how this con would never be as good as Dragon Con. Which honestly, who cares? She was also flinging spittle all over my drawing with apparently zero awareness. Also, women artists at the tables near me, always having to fend off creepy lurky dudes who just won't go away. It's sad. A massive and amazingly plotted out Sailor Moon panel was completely derailed by these two kids. They were about 10 and 12, a little young considering it was way late in the night, but it wasn't an adult panel so they got in. Constant barrage of questions. Anytime they started talking it led to a 5-minute rant on how their classmates at school don't understand what being an otaku is like. The panelist was clearly flustered but wasn't sure what to do about this so she answered them and let them go on. She got to cover maybe 20% of her panel. About half of the room of 70-ish people left because it was just too much. This is why panels need a moderator. I was standing in the artist's alley talking to some people at a table about the character I was dressed as, when some crazy person literally jumped on me from behind shrieking something about pretty cosplay. Then he grabbed my butt and ran away making bizarre noises. It was rather unsettling and pissed me off considerably. This happened just last year actually. Me and my girlfriend were cosplaying Blitz and IQ from Rainbow Six Siege at a relatively small con. Things were fantastic at the start. Lots of "oh hey guys can I get a picture" just felt pretty good to get some recognition. We had worked really hard on the costumes and even made Blitz's flash shield with working lights. A few hours in and some guy in a costume I didn't recognize shouts, "Blitz, I need to fight you." Sure dude, we'll pose for some fight pictures. No big deal. Well, he didn't really grasp the concept of posing and started actually punching my shield, which was made of some relatively thin pegboard material and the view slot was just plastic. I told him to tone it down and just put his fist against it so it looked like he was hitting it in the picture. His response? "It's a shield dude. It'll be fine." And punches the plastic right out of the shield. I'm P. My girlfriend is P. The dude is ecstatic. He throws up his fists and battle cries before running off. Frick you, dude. Years ago, my wife and I were at a smaller comic convention in Toronto. We were walking around the vendor section and came to a custom chainmail shop, staffed by a single girl, probably 17-18, outfitted in leather shorts and a chainmail bra. I assume whoever else was working the booth with her left for a bit. Anyways, it was just a single table and the backdrop behind her. A significantly older, very off-putting man was standing at her table, making bad smell talk, while taking multiple photos of the clearly weirded out girl. She looked over at us and was practically screaming for help with her eyes. My wife pushed over to the table and started talking and asking her product related questions, and the dude wandered off after a couple of minutes. At the same con, I left my wife alone for a bit, and she ended up cornered in a booth trying to be as polite as possible while a random guy explained to her his theories of how the Joker is personification of pure chaos, and how he would just stab someone in the neck because he could. My tip for any guys looking to make small talk with random girls at a convention: don't lead with how your favorite comic character is awesome because he can murder anyone he wants at any time. Good on you and your wife for intervening. I've been that girl and it is terrifying. I went to my first ever convention at the age of 13. I didn't dress up or anything. I just wanted to take pictures of good cosplayers. My friend and I spotted a very handsome and flawless Moroku cosplayer. Inuyasha was my favorite anime at the time. I was ecstatic and my friend pushed me in his direction to take a picture with him. I scooted close to him and, staying true to character, he groped my butt. It was the best goddamn day of my life. Years later, I realized how creepy it is to be 13, groped by a 20-year-old, and have it be the highlight of my middle school days. I cosplayed as Moroku for my first con, and I can't remember how old I was, but it must have been younger than 16. I must have had at least a dozen women, most who must have been older than me, ask for pictures where I groped their butt. I thought it was awesome. Teenage Homestuck cosplayers laying in the middle of the walkways outright dry humping and making out. When they were asked to move, they made a huge crap fit about it, accusing the staff of being homophobic. The Homestuck fanbase is super weird. One time I was cosplaying as Felicia from Darkstalkers, a character who is a cat girl. This girl at a con just ran up out of nowhere screaming "Glomp the Nico" as she launched herself at me and practically tackled me. Then she stood there hugging me without permission as I tried to extricate myself, and she stank really badly. Also, same con and costume, some obese guy who was watching a door to check for badges told me I couldn't come in until I hugged him. I've only been to one convention, but here goes. Cringiest moment was during the cosplay competition. There was a couple that was dressed as Toph and Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. The, frankly annoying, host announced to the audience that Zuko has an important question to ask his girlfriend. Apparently it's a thing to propose during the competition. So they do their little show. Toph throws a foam rock at Zuko, and then they just stand there awkwardly. The guy gets cold feet or whatever, because like 2 minutes pass where it's not clear what's going to happen. They walk off stage. Then the girl comes back and stands there for a few seconds, then goes away again. Zuko comes back and stands there. The host doesn't know what to say. She kinda ignores him and talks about how mean it is to throw rocks at your boyfriend. Zuko gets the hint and walks off. Then the host goes, "Oh, looks like he changed his mind. Maybe we'll get a proposal next year." Other highlights include a cosplayer making a very serious 15-minute speech about how cosplaying changed his life and everybody should follow their dreams. Some spelling and some details. Please, my beloved geeks and nerds, do not propose at the con. There was a very awkward moment during the Q&A at the TNG panel at Star Trek Mission New York back in September. She said no. Volunteered for large cons for 15 years. Was on break talking to a friend cosplaying as Sailor Mars. She's an attractive girl and was sitting with myself and a con chair for a different con when a young male shuffled up. He opened by complimenting her costume. He then followed up with "I've fantasized about you since I was 13. I facepalmed and there was a pause and he just sort of shuffled away." Sailor Mars continued on our original conversation. I can only imagine the horrors she has had to put up with. For me it was last year at the Sydney Smash Anime Convention. I saw the Dark Magician girl figure where you can see the panty shot at a stall and this dude was just hovering it for ages and looking at it in different angles. Then started speaking to me about the underwear she was wearing. Then went off about hentai. Wasn't trolling, this was a genuine conversation starter for this guy. Things you shouldn't bring up in polite conversation and or with strangers. Religion, politics, pee preferences. A lot of cons now promote inclusiveness. That is, you should cosplay as who you want, etc. My husband and I were walking around, and he saw a girl wearing a great costume. She was with a group of people. He said, "Oh, that's really great." For whatever reason, the group openly mocked him. Like, full on mocking, mimicking his words, everything. I'd get if they were teens, but everyone there was at least 25 plus, and my husband and I are in our 30s. Seriously, what? Was dragged to a Ponicon by a friend who promised it would be fun. I don't even like My Little Pony, but I went anyway. We stayed at the hotel that the con was being hosted at, and the first day that we arrive we are waiting in the lobby when suddenly a random guy throws a pony toy in through the lobby doors. He then proceeds to run inside after it and squat into some ninja pose to retrieve it. He is wearing a Free Hugs shirt. His friend follows him in equally as nerdy. They spot us across the lobby and realize we are there for the con. Friend was in cosplay. They walk over. No freaking joke. pretending to be robots and say hey ladies and point to their free hugs shirt. I look at my friend like, no freaking way am I hugging these greasy boys, and she just laughs and hugs them. I stand firmly with my arms crossed. She gives me the come on don't be and butt look, so I give in and hug them. They both hug me soul crushingly tight then leave. They had that lingering crappy pants smell on top of rodent killing BO. As they were walking away I heard one of them say dude her titties felt so soft against my chest. It's safe to say the rest of the con was heck too. We were selling at a pretty busy con, but things slowed down around the time of a big event. As they do. This guy who'd walked past our booth earlier stopped back by. He was obviously into steampunk, which is what we sell, because he'd made his own mechanical arm with duct tape and gadgets and a bracer. We complimented his components, made general chit chat while he glanced at our wares. He noticed we have some Doctor Who and Star Wars watches. So he spent the next 35 minutes telling us all about his fanfiction where his character is the Doctor on his 14th generation. How he uses the TARDIS to go into the Star Wars universe at various times to fix this or that. Goes into a steampunk realm which is where his gadgets came from. Then crosses into a series I didn't recognize. And may at one point have landed on Serenity and given advice to Captain Mal. Because no one else was around. We were at his mercy. Finally people started coming back to the vendor room and we made some excuse to get him to move along. TL. Doctor please make sure someone is actually interested in your fanfic before you talk at them about it at length. Last year, my then fiancée cosplayed as Kamala Khan. This one really creepy guy approached us and started up a conversation with her about how great her costume was. Then he spent about 10 minutes talking her ear off about all the people that he wanted Kamala Khan to have sex with in the comics. Dude, we don't care if you think that seeing her with Gwenpool or Wolverine would be hot. It's pretty creepy. He asked her who she wanted to see have sex with Kamala, which got the response no one. She's 16. Meaning the character, not the fiancé. That didn't really stop him though. We ended up having to walk away from him mid-sentence because he wasn't getting the hint. It's like being socially oblivious is his superpower. At PAX Prime this past summer my daughter and I were dressed as Link and Zelda. A man dressed as Ganon approached my daughter, who in her Zelda outfit looked to be about 17-18, but she was only 14, and told her so, why don't you and I head to my castle, while my buddies take care of the old lady? Sadly my sword wasn't quite sharp enough to bisect him. That's not even a good line. He should have suggested the two of you join him and make a Triforce. I sell comics at conventions and have seen a lot of really cringy stuff. The ones that make me cringe the most are the furries. There's always a group of them, and while they stick to their own little group, they constantly feel the need to grope each other in the main hall. There's also those groups, usually girls who constantly run around, like sprinting, and when they see someone they know, they jump on them, glomping or whatever the frick you call it. All I know is that whatever it is, it annoys me. I always feel bad for the cosplaying ladies. I've become good friends with many of them since we all go to the same cons all the time, and my mom who helps with the business loves to go talk to them at panels about sewing and stuff. They get creeped on so much, especially the ones with very large breasts. Like one girl who has done some nude modeling and does cosplaying for a living now. People can't just take pictures, they always try to grope her. Just cause you post a nude picture online doesn't mean you're giving permission for people to just feel you up whenever they want. I've seen some funny stuff too though. I saw two people dressed as the Fed walk up to each other. One took off their helmet and was a rather attractive girl. The other took off their helmet and had a horse head on under it. The girl grabbed the horse head and pulled that off, and it was Deadpool. I laughed pretty hard. The cringiest thing and creepiest things I've ever seen as a con actually both happened at a local convention held at a university. The cringiest one was a guy participating in a cosplay contest as his original steampunk character, which would have probably been fine on its own if he didn't answer all of the judges' questions on stage awkwardly in character. The creepiest thing I saw requires some context. When we were at this same contest, the winner was a guy who was clearly in his 30s or 40s doing his own OC, which was a samurai with a mask covering his face. He talked to my girlfriend and complimented her on her outfit, and he seemed really nice every time we talked to him. But a day after the convention we found out that they revoked his award because they found he was sexually harassing young girls earlier that night and registered for the convention under a fake name. It was a local convention, so most of the people there knew each other, but no one had any idea who this guy was. I had a rumor in my hometown that one of the guys who won the dress-up contest in a local small con was a pedophile who wouldn't stop harassing children and 14-year-olds. It was already over by then, so I couldn't confirm, but I wouldn't doubt it. I attend and cosplay conventions a few times a year. Here are some of the things I've seen. My friends and I were trying to make our way through an extremely packed and drunk crowd at DragonCon. Some random, presumably intoxicated woman came up to my friend, lifted part of his costume, grabbed his dong, and walked away. Never said a word to him. While waiting for an elevator, my friends and I watched this obviously just met but oh so in love couple hug and cuddle. The elevator came, and the girl got on with us. No crap. She extended her arm in a I'll never let go fashion to him, and then after the doors closed, she leaned her head against them and sighed dramatically. At a panel on fanfiction writing, there was a middle-aged man going up to the people seated in his nearby radius, asking them to read a printed version of his latest Pokemon story. I was one of those people. The writing was awful, but I tried to give whispered constructive criticism, but he wanted to loudly discuss the pros of his story all while the people leading the panel were trying to host a discussion and answer questions. I tried ignoring him, straight up telling him to lower his voice, and telling him I had nothing to say, but he would not leave me alone. He was clearly autistic, so I did not want to be blatantly mean to him or trigger a bigger disruption, but dang. Later that night I saw him at a karaoke event where he attempted to sing the Digimon theme song in Japanese. It went about as well as you'd expect. My friend and I, cosplaying as Sailor Jupiter and Sailor Venus, were used to people stopping us for photos and compliment us on our costumes, but one guy clearly took a photo of only our legs. I sell some original comics and usually have a table, but the story that sticks out to me is that at a con there was a kid who was about 14 and pretty nerdy. He went on and on to us about a vendor having ice cream planets. I guess they were in Firefly. These were balls of ice cream on the end of a string that you had to eat while holding it up in the air. He made a point every time he had one to walk past our table making eye contact with us as he tried to eat this ice cream that was on a string. That food sounds problematic. Oh god, I will never forget this one. Happened at a particularly large anime convention. Listen to two 20-somethings very awkwardly have this conversation on a shuttle bus from the convention center back to our hotel at night. A is a skinny guy wearing these bizarre light-up shutter shades. B is a moderately attractive girl with light-up rings on her fingers and an unrecognizable cosplay. A, oh my god, I am so freaking lit right now. B, I've been lit since at least 10:30 this morning. A, wow, you go hard. Where do you find beer that early? B, looks at A incredulously. Seriously? Just go to a liquor store. A, laughs awkwardly. Haha, yeah. Silence for a few minutes. A, so have you gotten lit every day of the con so far? B, oh yeah, pretty much every con I go to. Me and my crew just get totally lit. Another weird silence. A, you should come back to my room. There's gonna be a huge party later. B, sounds cool. I'll tell my friends. Should I bring anything? A, could you bring some of that fun juice? B, looking confused, but laughing awkwardly. Lol, what? A, could you bring some of those beers? End scene. Just freaking cringe city. Also, this conversation was super loud on a coach bus packed full of people. So lit. Some Deadpool cosplayer was running around doing silly poses and trying to be witty and charming until he tripped in front of a large crowd and landed pretty hard on his knee. It was obvious he was hurt, so someone went to help him and he screams frick off as you can see tears soaking through his mask. Full grown man, jumping around in the cringiest attempt at being Deadpool, smashes his knee, lashes out and cries. This one sounds more in Deadpool spirit if anything. Maybe we found the real Wade Wilson. Oh, I have a couple. This one is more of a funny cringe. Couple years ago I had a cosplay of Janna from League of Legends. Now it's fairly skimpy so I expect some ogling, but at the same time, I'm fairly flat chested and the costume covers more than most of my swimsuits. It's really nothing crazy. We were all hanging out in the registration line when this kid comes over and starts talking to me and my friend about League. My friend is dressed as LeBlanc the entire time. He's staring straight at my chest, never takes his eyes away. Kinda a weird experience for me, since I am flat-chested. Anyways, after like 5 minutes of only boob staring, he must have realized I noticed, so he apologizes for only looking at my chest. Only he still wasn't able to make eye contact, so my boobs received the apology. Scariest was, I believe, the same con. Me and LeBlanc, we wandering around a more public area in the convention center, and a couple of older 30s guys who weren't going to the con were asking questions about what the heck was going on. We explain and chat for a bit, then wander off. We're walking down a longer hallway, getting stopped a fair amount for pics. It's weird, for some reason Jana and LeBlanc get a lot of pics, and we notice the two guys are still behind us. Whenever we stop for a pic, they stop too and try to look like they're not following us. But we kept going for a bit till we realized that the con is pretty much all behind us and there's far less people here, so we turn around. The guys stand awkwardly there till we pass them again and start following again. Alarm bells are now ringing. We tried passing around a divider in the hall and they still followed. I'm now searching for security and we're kinda booking it towards somewhere you need a badge to get in. Finally we made it to the artist Sally and duck in. Didn't see the guys again, thankfully. I was almost in tears from your "my boobs received the apology" comment. One of my favorite ones so far. But then the creepy experience made me shudder. People suck. The amount of people who feel like it's okay to just touch and grab you in costume is pretty nuts. I've never personally worn a sexy costume either, but fans of your character almost act like they own you. The amount of people that suddenly think it's okay to drag you around, grab your props, get pee if you don't have time to a photo is weird. There's always the creepy dudes that want to know what you're wearing under that armor, or just feel the need to tell you that they're going to fantasize about you. I think the most uncomfortable experience for me wasn't even sexual. This drunk dude came up to me and asked if my body armor was real. No dude, it's literally made out of foam. So it won't hurt if I do this, and he punches me in the boob. Like, super hard. Yes, you walking weaponized douchebag. That freaking hurts. I am a small woman. Eventually this dude's friend physically picked him up and dragged him away after my friend starting yelling. I was too winded to even react. Fortunately I was able to cover up the damage to my armor with fake battle damage, but still, don't punch people. Yeah, that is actually assault. Most cons happen in very urban areas. I always cringe when I am making the long walk from parking lot to convention center in costume, because the random suited people on the street are usually just minding their own business when they see me, an adult dressed as a freaking Jedi, going about my own way. It's definitely embarrassing having people see you dressed up with no context, but it's all okay once you make it into the building and everyone already knows what to expect. The cringiest thing I have seen another person do was go on stage for a costume contest and make a joke that nobody got in the entire audience of hundreds of people. There was dead silence for a solid 15 seconds or so, then the room filled with hesitant sympathy chuckles. Creepiest con experience was when some guy tried to grab my little stepbrother's hand and walk off with him. I've been pretty lucky, especially as a chick cosplaying Poison Ivy, which is admittedly a pretty sexy costume, corset, heels, etc. No super hardcore harassment. The worst thing I've experienced are people, men, getting really close or trying to put their hands on inappropriate areas during requested photos. Like, I'm okay with a photo, but no, you can't put your hands on my butt. I've also had people ask me to leave my boyfriend and come with them, even if only for a night. Cringe dude. Definitely no. Used to date a cosplayer who took the hobby very seriously. In addition to making costumes for herself and others, she did cosplay photography for some money on the side. One time a guy who seemed pretty normal asked to take a few photos of her on the con floor. He seemed to know what he was doing, so they sat and talked shop for a while. Ended up trading business cards and then went their separate ways. A few days later she got a message from the guy, offering to do a free photoshoot for her. Well, kind of. He was offering to do a free photoshoot of her feet, specifically. Gotta give him credit for being upfront about it, I guess. What's the creepiest thing a person of the opposite sex has ever done to you? Thinking it was okay. He was in a car and had grey hair. While I was just walking home, he kept asking me for my phone number and calling me cute even after I told him I was only 15. Funny enough, telling him I was a lesbian turned him off. My sister's friend snuck into my room when I was asleep and tried to pretend she was my girlfriend. It was dark. For some sexy time. The creepiest part by far was how off-putting her attempt at imitating my GF voice was, followed by me hitting the lights. Her dress is like my GF and her lame attempt at pretending she was kidding around and half asleep. Now that is some fricked up crap. Freshman year of high school, I was talking during health class and my teacher told me, "You better behave or I am going to spank you." He also told a different girl, when she was scared that she would have an asthma attack during a mile run, that it's okay, I'll just give you mouth to mouth. Okay, that's pretty freaking creepy. Not me, but my old co-worker and friend. We drove for the local bus service. She was in a semi-dodgy part of town at a terminus stop and a large group got off the bus. As they exited, she felt something brush her hair. She ignored it, thinking it was a jacket or backpack. She continues on and notices a smell. She touches her hair and looks at her hand. Some guy had jacked off, which we were warned about some of them doing when a female driver is on shift, into his hand and then wiped his CM on her hair as he exited the bus. I heard that story and quit. Frick, that. Old man customer I'd never seen before came up to front counter, looked me and my very obviously underage trainee up and down, and said, without even a hello, "I saw a couple of girls that look just like you two last night on Girls Gone Wild. What do you think about that?" I'd like to say I told him to leave, but we were shocked into stunned silence. I honestly don't remember the rest of the interaction. I think I probably just muttered out "what can I get for you" and sent him on his way. There was another time back in college where in passing conversation I admitted I don't like my neck being touched. The next day one of the guys who was part of that conversation snuck up behind me and grabbed me around the throat. I flipped out on him and told him never to touch me again. And he got all upset and thought I was the one being a jerk and overreacting. I didn't even know him very well at all. I mean, to do something you've explicitly been told is not okay at all and then get offended is the most childish and entitled bulls. She put her bare feet on my lap. Okay, no problem, she's a friend and a clean person. She puts her foot under my shirt. Hot. She slides her foot up my stomach, chest. It pokes out the top of my shirt and places it on my cheek and caresses my face with her foot. Her boyfriend was sitting on the opposite side of her. It was all very odd. 2. I thought of one. I was at a gay bar with some friends and went to the restroom. There were like 3 drunk chicks using the men's room sinks, but I didn't care, so I just started using the urinal. One of these chicks comes up behind me while I'm peeing and fills up my abs with both hands and says, "Why do all gay men have nicer stomachs than my husband?" I laugh it off. Didn't mention to them that I'm straight. Even if you were gay, this isn't okay. Straight women often treat gay men like pets and it's unacceptable. This often includes breaking barriers of appropriate physical contact. Local gas attendant tried to kiss me one day after we built up a month-long forced customer attendant type of interaction. In NJ we don't pump our own gas because of the law. Asked if I would go to his poker party and dance on a table naked for them. He thought it was okay because he offered me $100 and followed that up by saying it wasn't weird because he can't even get it up anymore. He looked to be in his 70s. He then told me he'd give me an extra $100 if he did get hard. I worked in a dance chair store. And another $100 if you have sex with him. And another $100 if he can tie you up. And another $100 if you don't tell. Some weird older dude at the Renaissance fair tried to walk up and hug me. I quickly sidestepped and said, "Don't touch me." He made a point every time he walked past to put his hands up exaggeratedly and walk backwards from me. A stranger added me on FB. I accepted the friend request so I could see his full profile and figure out if I knew him. Almost immediately he started leaving comments. Told me I was pretty, that he loved me, and asked if I was married. Then he starts sharing pictures of me to his page. Not funny things I posted, but actual pictures of just me. Immediately blocked. Accepted the friend request so I could see his full profile. Seems like a bad idea. This guy who I was friends with from high school was showing me around his uni when I visited his city, and he took me down an alley and said, "This is where all my friends come to make out and hook up." I whipped my head to look at him like what, and he pushed me up against the wall and pinned my hands down in like 0.2 seconds. I was sure I was going to die in that alley that day, and I didn't know how to react in shock. He looked at me weird for a few seconds and let me go and started laughing. We got out of that alley to some cafe for lunch, and I faked a phone call and just left. He probably had that planned out days, if not weeks in advance. Was definitely always into you and saw that as his big opportunity to take charge and finally make a move. Could have attitude. A complete stranger I'd never seen, let alone met, before in my life sat down right next to me one day when I was in college. I was doing some reading for a class while I waited for my next class to start in an hour. I was at a circular table with 4 benches. Each could fit 2-3 people on it. No one else was at the table. He sat right next to me, so our legs were touching, and he grabbed my hand. I tried to pull away and he held me down. Started talking to me, telling me what a great guy he was, and literally going on and on about how great and attractive he was. He was not either of those things. I was in complete shock and fear and panicking. I didn't scream or call for help. I decided it would be best to let him get his spiel out and book it the second I could. We were alone in this part of the courtyard. He inevitably demands I give him my phone number. No, he didn't ask. He told me to write down my number. I refused, and he was in absolute disbelief. He still had my arm pinned down and he was holding my hand in his. My palms were sweating because I was absolutely terrified, and he had the audacity to dramatically peel his hand from mine and make a grossed out face. Called me ugly and worthless. I ran. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know what the frick to do. But 2 days later, when I had to return to that area for my class, my heart pounding because I was afraid of running into him, I saw him doing the same thing with another girl. I went up and acted like she was my friend and got her out of there. I still didn't report him. I don't know if she did. I never saw him again after that. Hopefully he hasn't murdered anyone. I'll never ever forgive myself for not reporting him to the campus security or the cops. I am so lucky I wasn't hurt in any way. He was so creepy, and the vibes I was getting from him. I would not be surprised if he has hurt women. This reads like every guy I know who tries to fake being alpha. He clearly thought that being dominant means telling you what to do and that women like dominant men. Guarantee you he's an incel now. Grabbed and squished my boob with both hands through my sweater to give me an idea of how many pages were in a book he was reading. We were out by a lake walking in the fall and had sat down for a bit. It was our second and last date. Changed her status to "it's complicated" after I turned down a few dates but didn't ghost her. I guess that led her on and she told all her family about me. Gave me a glittery Hallmark card with a bunny and a duckling on the front, and the inside said, "Thanks for taking a giant pee on my life." She included some pastries, which everyone agreed I should not eat. Sent her a jar of pee. Was walking through the club with the guys, and this girl who was absolutely gross cut me off by kicking her leg out in front of me to block my path. She thought she was being sexy because she lifted up her skirt to show me she didn't have any panties on, but I just walked around the other way. Good guy, Ethan. A lady, probably 50 plus, was sitting next to me, 25, and kept resting her hand on my lap. I mentioned a shoulder injury to a friend and she interrupts and says, "Honey, as long as your dong works you'll be fine," and grabs my dong through my pants. Woke up in a drunken stupor to my friend's cousin, who I had turned down earlier that night, sitting on top of me trying to take my dong out of my pants. My response was to push her off, and she acted like I was an butthole for not going along with it. That's attempted rape. Thought it was okay to follow me onto the bus and introduce himself. Tried to sit by me and I didn't let him be. I put my backpack on the seat by me, so that prompted him to sit behind me and try to flirt with me. I hate myself for no having my headphones on me and not telling him to frick off. Luckily this dad with his kids who were sitting in front of me noticed that I was uncomfortable and told him to frick off. He also said, "That's not how you get a girlfriend, you creep. Leave her alone." The guy got off the next stop. I thanked the dad for his help and he said that I need to start defending myself even if I feel scared to say anything. That way I get the attention of everyone around me and make the creep feel vulnerable to point where they leave. So frick it, I'm going to make every freaking creep feel more vulnerable than they made me feel and make their goddamn skin crawl with fear. I had a girl at work I was not attracted to at all grab my butt once thinking it was no big deal. Like, WTF is wrong with you? Man, I feel yeah. I'm not really a club person, but decided to go out to a quite crappy club with my friends one night. To not always say no. A lot of girls, didn't even see most of them, grabbed my butt at night. While you can see it as a compliment or whatever, none of them talked to me or made eye contact first. Was really weird and didn't make me want to go there again. Someone once ran their fingers through my hair as I got off the subway. There was not water hot enough to make me feel clean after that. Someone behind me stroked my ponytail. I felt the same way. A guy followed me home from a festival and crawled into bed with me. My roommate left the door unlocked. We lived 2 hours from the city. Had to drive him back to town. He said he thought we hit it off. I only talked to him for a few minutes. A lot of these are going to be sexual in nature, so I'll do something different to spice it up. I once had a guy pull one of my grey hairs out, like saw it, then yanked it. When questioned he replied that he just figured women hated grey hair and so he was helping me out. I knew it was there. I knew I had 7 at the time. I hadn't decided what I was going to do. Color versus let it grow. And in that moment I felt violated, disgusted, and really dang protective of it. Like he had just made my mind up for me regarding what I was to do. I know it probably seems really small, but to me it really was gross. Note, I've had more disturbing, sexually charged things happen. This one just really caught me off guard. I have very long hair and don't often wear it down. Whenever I do, someone always pets it like a dog, any gender. It's really unsettling to have your hair touched, petted, grabbed without consent. Don't do it, ever. Broke into my hotel room and tried to take off my boxes and run away with them. Luckily I wasn't actually asleep and I'm faster than her. Context. This was the Air Force and all of us in the hotel knew each other. We were all there for a class from different bases. What the frick? I was performing at a regular open mic night. I was 19. After my set, one of the pub regulars 70s sat down next to me, slapped his hand on my thigh incredibly high up and said, "Ah, this is a good leg," and gave it a squeeze. Yesterday one of the regulars at my work came up to me, put his hands on me and whispered creepy crap in my ear. I'm 22, I look younger, and I work as a cashier for a dollar store. A man in his mid to late 30s came in and told me, "You're my favorite. I came in here just to see you," and lingered around the counter while I checked others out. That in itself didn't bother me as him and his girlfriend were both regulars, and the last time they were both in I had made an offhand comment about being their favorite cashier. I left register after my line was done and it was clear he wasn't going to buy anything or check out anytime soon. He followed me to the greeting card area, put his arm around my neck and asked how old I was and if I had a boyfriend. I told him my age and that yes I did. Our 1 year had recently come up and I was happy with him. Dude whispered, "Oh dang. A young skinny thing like you is my fantasy. Do you like to be a bad girl sometimes?" While touching the small of my back with his other hand. I cringed and told him no. He took his hands off me, smiled and told me to let him know if I changed my mind. He told me he'd come back every now and again just to flirt with me, and then he left. I told my manager about it. She said to point him out in the cameras so we can ban them. He ended up coming back to the store and buying things 20 minutes before we closed. My manager was counting till, so I had to ring him out and he acted completely normal. A co-worker started holding my hand while I was working. It was a large retail environment and we worked on opposite ends of the store. But he found me and grabbed my hand while I was in the middle of doing something and started telling me that he couldn't wait for us to get married and build a family together. When I didn't respond and only pulled my hand away, he went, "What? I can't even hold your hand now." He's never been allowed to hold my hand. We've never done anything together. He tried asking me out the first time he ever spoke to me and I declined. We made small talk once or twice in the following months, and that was somehow enough for him to think he could hold my hand and creepily talk about having children with me. I had a wannabe stalker that used to lurk around my work big time. Don't think he ever figured out where I lived. Thank God. I was waiting for my bus after a late shift once and he snuck up behind me and spit down the back of my neck. When I freaked, he said it was in case I wanted to be able to smell him later and enjoy his presence. There was not enough soap in my apartment. I ended up throwing out that hoodie because it just always reminded me of that night. Hold on, what the frick? Kind of long. I was a freshman in band and this guy was a junior. He asked to sit on the bus back to our town after a football game around 11 PM. I said yes because I didn't want to be mean and had horrible social anxiety. When the lights went off he kept putting his arm around me even when I asked him to stop several times. He asked me if I was a virgin, then right after if I wanted a ride home. He then put his hand around the back of my head and pushed my face into his crotch area pretending I was sucking him off. When we got back to the band hall he said, and I will never forget this, "Can I carry you off the bus bridal style?" I quit band when the year ended and reported him for sexual harassment about 2 months ago when I saw him. He's now a graduate, come and chill in my school like he still went there. When I told the principal, my dad, and officer they told me if he came back to campus he'd be arrested for criminal trespassing. Haven't seen him again. I know he did this to other people, just not as bad as he did with me. It's going on his record that he was reported but he won't be arrested. At least if he does anything else there will be support that he's done it before. Good on you for reporting. That is so important. What a freaking douche. I work in the restaurant industry, and my biggest thing is strangers touching me, and it's always old men. They'll ask me where the bathroom is, I'll show them, and they'll rub my shoulder and say thanks love, or on their way out, I'll give my usual take care, guys, and they'll say you too and give me a pat on the thigh. Always gives me shivers. Freaking gross. I don't think strangers should ever have any physical contact beyond a handshake. Period. Especially if I'm a young girl who looks potentially under 18. I'm 19 but I look young. It's not necessary and it's never fun. I am 25-ish, was at an all-day conference with some co-workers, and this girl sitting next to me asks if we need notes. I tell her that our boss prints them out just in case, but I've never needed them before so she can have them. She says something about sharing them, and then suddenly asks for my phone number. Now, I was very single at the time and would normally jump to give my number to a girl. However, something about the situation creeped me out, so I politely declined and just gave her the notes. She then proceeds to basically stalk me throughout the conference, asking repeatedly for my number and trying to find out where I work. This went on until the very end when she asked if I was going to give her my number or not. So I did it. I gave her a fake number. I totally get why women do that now. In college this girl entered my group of friends. I don't know who introduced her, but she was suddenly around all the time. We had maybe spoken 2 words to each other and she started calling me her that Paul Allen. She would also get in my personal space a lot. Little touches, random hugs, etc. I found it odd, but I didn't want to embarrass her or make the situation awkward. One night it was really bugging me so I messaged her on AOL and asked her what all the touching and possessive pet names were about. I straight up asked, do you have a crush on me or something? She went radio silent. 15 minutes later I'm crawling into bed when I hear a knock on my door. I open it and she's standing there. She just says yes. What could I say? I was just like, oh, well I don't feel the same, and she left. Pretty tame compared to everything in here, but the pet names and touching from someone I barely knew was what creeped me out. I was out with some friends and my sister at the local bar scene. Ended up running into my older cousin, who is a lesbian. I was like 22, cousin's around 50. She was with a friend, looked a few years older than my cousin. I assumed she was my cousin's date. Well, I decide to go hang with them for a bit and catch up since I hadn't seen my cousin since a funeral a few months prior. We end up in the local gay bar and we're dancing. By that I mean I can't find my cousin, and her old friend is getting uncomfortably close and touchy. Like, nah man, not my cup of tea. Eventually find my cousin and peace out. My friends were wishing me a happy 12th birthday back in middle school and some old lady heard and slapped my butt attempting to do that thing where they hit you the number of times of your age. I didn't even know her that well. I just jumped away looking at her weird. I never went back to go help them sell bread. At lunch my sophomore year of high school, she tried repeatedly to hold my hand under the table. When I finally put both my hands on the table, she grabbed my leg, then started tickling her way up my inner thigh, then seemed to be questing for my zipper. I got up without finishing my lunch and hid in the restroom until the bell rang. Yikes, that's straight up terrifying. When I was 17, I was walking back to my car in the evening. This man, looked about 35, came up behind me, telling me he liked my hair. I just kept walking. He continued to walk next to me, purposefully bumping his arm into mine. He also asked personal questions like where I live. I said it was none of his business. He then said I looked cold and tried to put his jacket on me. I said no and started walking faster. I reached my car and he asked for my number, despite not even knowing my name. I told him I was only 17 and I'm not interested. He said 17 wasn't an issue, then tried to open my car door to get in. I hadn't unlocked it yet. Thankfully, a couple walked by and I asked for help. He then ran off back down the street. I'm not a very bold person, and looking back I would have handled it differently. Please stay safe everyone. Having a daughter, this terrifies the crap out of me. Hit me in the ass a crack with a knuckle. This girl I know who's so totally inappropriate. I wasn't even shocked, but still, what the frick. Cancho. Had a lady, 50 plus, then my mother grabbed my dong and my butt while I was in the water at a beach. I was 21 and with my father as well. She asked if I would ditch my dad and head back to her apartment. She thought my father did not see what happened. My father took me back to the hotel. While she was attractive for her age, looked in her late 30s. Looking back, it was for the better. What becomes 10x creepier at night? I work at 4 AM so when I walk to my car it's still night basically. Once in a while a person is walking down the sidewalk, alone and I can only see them under the street lights. 1000x creepier at night. That's just me getting a slushie while working on a project due the next day. This day after a few days of zero sleep, I saw my cat sitting on top of my dresser at about 4 in the morning. I couldn't figure out why she wouldn't move. So I went up to her and petted her for a solid minute until my cat walked into my room. I had been petting my folded clothes. Love insomnia. The sudden absence of any noise. The air conditioner shuts off. It's suddenly, absolutely quiet, and you wonder what's creeping up on you that's making no noise whatsoever. You try to listen in. It seems the silence itself is creeping closer and closer. Even the ringing in your ears ceases. Then, you see it. Nobody hears your scream. My kids, the little monsters, like to run around the house or stealthily crawl into my room to scare me, ask for a drink. In my house the heat turns on in the middle of the night and makes a ticking sound in the walls. So if it's midnight I'll wake up to hear ticking. Then I'd feel heat. Then I see my dog on my bed, Black Lab, and I scream. Happened last night. Someone humming a slow melody. Imagine being up on Reddit at 4 AM while in bed and you suddenly hear someone quietly humming. This is amplified tenfolds if you live alone. Your room is silent save the fan that rumbles by your bed. You're breathing, steady as a drum, with sheep counts in your head. But then you wake with eyes wide. An inky fear burns through. You hear a ghostly voice sing Baby Shark do 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 do. There's an elderly woman down the road who will often stand outside and call for her cat to come home. Sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes hours. However long it takes the cat to come. In the daytime, it's just laughable. But at night, she's a gown wearing silhouette under the streetlight, calling some name like something out of an urban legend. And it's horrifying. When I had first moved here and heard that going on at midnight, I turned off all my lights and peeked through the window blinds. Thought it had to be some kind of lost spirit. I also can't shake the mental image of a man in a cat costume crawling toward her on all fours. My baby, there you are. You feel your blanket fall off your bed. It feels like something is pulling it down every time I feel it happening. Scares me shitless. You laugh nervously and pull the blanket back. It seems to be falling again. You pull it back, but it's harder to do so than it should be. Then, you see the hand. Cornfields. I live in the Midwest out in the country. There is something about cornfields swaying in the wind at night that just creeps me the frick out. Theme parks. I used to do overnight cleaning in them. When you're there all alone around dead animatronics and weird shaped buildings at 4 AM, it's frickin' scary. And then Chuck E. Cheese follows you home. Raccoons and opossums. Bonus points if you can only hear and not see them rifling through trash. I always think it's a person. I mean, I do have feelings like a person. Crickets, shadows, moths flying in your face, your reflection in the window at night. Just a few that give me the chills. LOL. When I hear dogs barking outside at like 3 AM. 1. Why are they outside so late on such a cold night? 2. What could they possibly be barking at? 3. If they're barking, something's out there, and if I can hear them barking, it means that something is close. When you have a holiday house in a small town in Australia, right near a rather large lake, don't look at the lake. I did it once and thought I saw a massive black thing swimming around in the water. In fact, at least half of the people who live there, that I have asked, have said they have seen something massive swimming around in the ocean or lake at night. So open, deep, murky water is 10x more terrifying at night. The slight dense cats leave in their wake as they walk up my bed toward my face. These vanish after a while, but then there's the kneading, this, and History Channel. My thoughts, inane though they are. Firstly, when the entire household is asleep and I begin to hear the ringing in my ears, it becomes ever more insistent. Then I think I can hear voices, and the harder I try to listen, the more they seem to find mirth in my inability to focus on what they are saying. The dark. It becomes darker and begins to shift and tremble and waver and wane, then darken and lighten, and blacken again. The breathing. In the corner, in the ceiling, below me, it's coming from somewhere, but in the dark I can't see. So I close my eyes and try to feign sleep, breathe deeply and slowly. Then colors assail me. In various sizes and shapes they all come. I hold my breath, close my eyes, open them. Then slowly, yes, slowly, sleep comes for me. And before I'm aware, I'm deeper than deep, inside of a nightmare, dancing with ghosts, singing with demons. They claim I'm their host. I wake, think I'm screaming, but the silence persists. It's just, I was dreaming. No evil exists. It's just nighttime, just bedtime, just shadows at night. I wait till the sun's out. I can't sleep well at night. Well, dang. I know this is super specific to me, but fire scenes. During the day, fire scenes aren't exactly welcoming, but they aren't unwelcoming. It's just a burnt area. There are holes to let sunlight through and whatnot. You can see how bad it is, but it just doesn't hit you as hard. At least not to me. But I've been on a lot of scenes. But a fire scene at night is creepy. Like after the fire is out and you're the only one there. The char and ash soaks up any ambient light. Once a fire has gone through a house, it still makes noises, but they sound different. Houses creak and crack and all that, but for some reason fire scenes sound more human. Multiple times I've walked out of scenes that had gone into nighttime because I just couldn't take the feeling anymore. There's just a feeling of being in a black hole. Like there's no way out. You get lost in your own thoughts and you're walking through this destroyed building full of memories that are gone, only being guided by the beam of a tiny flashlight. Then a freaking smoke detector chirps from under your foot and you haul butt out the house and come back the next day. When I was around 6 or so, I'm 40 now, the house next door to my childhood home burned. Our phone started ringing around 2 in the morning and it was one of the neighbors telling us to get out of our house because the fire next door was so bad that they thought it might burn our house as well. The firefighters got there before it could do any damage to our house. Thank goodness. It understandably freaked my parents out and their reaction scared me. When we got outside, the firefighters were on their way. Luckily they got there and started putting out the fire and our house was fine. I never will forget my parents' reactions, and I also won't forget the fire burning that night. It was creepy and makes me uneasy when I think of it. The family who lived in the house were all gone at the time. Also the house stayed there burned out for several years. which was also creepy, especially at night. Someone standing by your bed. My dad had an incident when a guy attacked him with a machete while asleep. The same thing that can also happen to me considering housing in Boston means roommates and weak doors that can go picked with a piece of paper. Also, despite any statistics about Boston, mental illness is noticeable among the population. Freaking scary. My desk chair. Whenever I go to switch off the light on my nightstand, I always find myself staring at my desk chair, convinced that it's the silhouette of a demon named Gregory that had come to harvest my soul. But instead of eating it or using it for power, he would take it to sell on the black market so he can pay for his child support. It scares me every time. 1. Feeling like you're being watched. 2. The thought of being killed. 3. A 7-foot woman holding a knife. 4. My dog. 5. My easel. 6. Mirrors. Mirrors are always scary. I once woke up in the middle of the night feeling like I was being watched. My daughter, who was 2 or 3 at the time, was standing beside my bed with a huge kitchen knife and an apple. She said she was hungry and wanted me cut up the apple for her. Scared me shitless. A forest. When I was a kid, we would go camping often at a lake a few hours from home. During the day, we'd hang out on the shore and sometimes go walking into the woods. It was fun. Then at night we'd light a campfire and sit around it to eat dinner and talk. I'd sit there and look into those exact same woods I was happily walking through a few hours earlier, and imagine getting up and walking into them. Just the thought of it scared the crap out of me. I was staying at a friend's house last weekend, and it was eerily silent. It's usually very windy this time of year, but last weekend, the nights were completely still. I was outside just enjoying the serenity of the plains, away from my home in the suburbs, when I heard some movement in the horse pen behind me. I was expecting to see a horse approaching me, so I shined my flashlight in that direction to see if I could tell which horse was coming my way. I'm not afraid of horses' eyes in the dark, because I know what they look like, but what appeared in my light was no horse. Too small, close together, amber to red eyes stared back at me. Whatever those demonic eyes belonged to was too far away from my light, so I couldn't see what the eyes belonged to. All I could see were the eyes. Then, I heard another noise, seemingly coming from the red-eyed devil creature. It sounded like laughter coming from an old lady. It was like a hell. I don't think I've ever sprinted to the house so fast in my life. As I ran, I heard the same creature that let out the hell yelling at me, just going, "Hurrah." I slipped on some ice on the gravel, immediately got back to my feet, clambered up the wooden porch steps, practically ripped the front door of its hinges, and then slammed it behind me. Panting and wide-eyed, I headed to the basement where my buddies were playing video games. Turns out, they bought a couple of goats. I wish I knew that before that traumatizing experience. Putting this here because why not? Here's a little exercise that at worst makes you less scared of irrational fears, and at best prevents a serious anxiety disorder. When you're in a situation where you're scared or anxious but know that you're not in danger, try to not react in fear, looking around frantically, running, breathing hard, avoiding areas that make you scared. These behaviors confirm to your brain that there actually is danger. If you can manage to breathe deep, not look over your shoulder, walk at the same pace as before you got scared, and even face your fear directly, you send your brain the message that this is actually not a dangerous situation. The center for fear in your brain is called the amygdala. It's the size of an almond and the fastest learning area in your brain. It doesn't understand English. It speaks in emotions and body language. The best way to properly communicate with your amygdala is to use body language. The more often you manage to stay calm, the faster the amygdala learns that this situation is not dangerous. Since you're not reacting with fear, it works the other way as well. If you give in to anxiety, the amygdala learns that this situation must be dangerous. Just one traumatic experience can be enough to make you avoid parts of daily life. That's how fast the amygdala learns. It was useful when humans were hunter-gatherers, not so much anymore, but it's still there. Source: way too many, yet still not enough hours of therapy. Horror movies, games, creepypastas, etc. Even the best ones during the day would only make me think it was a nice story, but at night, It feels like a primal part of my brain activates and I feel a need to double check that my doors are locked. Since I'm also an occasional insomniac, I can also say the creepiness effect gets stronger into the night and peaks around 2-3 am. That's the best time to enjoy any horror media. A chair with a jacket on it. You have no idea how scary it is when you wake up at like 3 am to see what you think is a person standing in the middle of the room. These reoccurring dreams that I have about once or twice every month or 2 months. I sometimes get sleep paralysis, but occasionally I dream about this woman who knows who I am and I know who or what she is. It's this overbearing dread and hate I get from her. She is some sort of evil entity, and every dream I find myself deeper into a house where she lures my family and I try to save them. Sometimes I save at least one family member, other times I don't save any and the house locks me out. The last time I had this dream I was on the phone with my girlfriend, in the dream, and I made it to the top of these steps that must have been 4 stories. When I reached the top, a sliding wooden door that was open revealed a long hallway. I knew my little brother was down that hallway, so I knew I had to go in. I kept telling my girlfriend the hallway looks endless. Then in my dream I remember this dreadful sense of hate washing over me. I remember telling my girlfriend she is here. She told me to rush forward, and when I did the sliding door slammed and I was pushed backwards down the stairs I came up. The dream ended as I went backwards. This is the first time in all of my dreams with this woman that she has actually killed me. The sleep paralysis usually sets in after I wake up from the dreams. My bed will feel like it's shaking and this heavy weight hits me and I can't move and I fight to speak. Sometimes during the paralysis I can get some muffled words out. One night I felt like everything was so real I managed to actually raise my upper torso out of my bed. I don't know if this counts, but at night when these things occur I become terrified and brave, and it makes the dreams 10 times scarier when the sleep paralysis hits me. Some nights it feels like she is actually here and that the weight is her holding me down. Playgrounds. Story time. When I was in college I used to hang out at a friend's house that was a few miles from my apartment. A couple of times my roommate drove us and got trashed, leaving me the choice of sleeping on the floor or walking home. I like my bed. The path home goes between a playground and a cemetery. No biggie, right? Did I mention it's 3 am? Well, I'm walking through the playground and the swings are creaking, which happens. Then I realize that there's no wind, and only one of the 3 swings is moving back and forth in a regular motion. I never ran so fast in my life. A parked car with someone in it. He sits in the dark in the still of his car, a shape in the shade that you see from afar. A shadow in silence, a small silhouette, a figure, a form that you'll hope to forget. He sits in the dark and he waits in the dim, and you will see nothing, and nothing but him. A bane to your mind and a burden to sleep. He thinks, God, I hope I don't look like a creep. Phone calls. Someone knocking or ringing the doorbell. Walked through my town center at like 1 am one night. No one is around. Every single phone box that is dotted around is ringing. I didn't dare answer one in case I accidentally started one of those crazy mini games on GTA. An ice cream truck slowly driving through the neighborhood playing the Pop Goes the Weasel melody. I had a nightmare just like this. In the dream I lived in a huge city, but for some reason, everyone was gone. Everything was awash in that coppery artificial lots, as an ice cream truck slowly began going down the street with that song playing. I was on the top floor of the building though, so I didn't care. But suddenly I flew down hundreds of floors while still in my bed, to the very bottom floor, right by the entrance to the building. When the melody was right before the pop part, the truck stopped. Then I heard someone whisper pop in my ear. Unfortunately for that ice cream man, I have a trick of turning any nightmare into a sexy dream at any point. What great times we had. Old man in a lawn chair in the front yard not doing anything. This was my neighbor and it only scared me once till I figured he just liked being outdoors. Lawn chair, driveway, dog sleeping at his feet. It's midnight in summer and he's out there under the moon surrounded by empty beer cans. Then a snowy winter morning, school's cancelled. But he's sitting in the driveway in his lawn chair in a big puffy jacket, scarf hat and gloves, literally getting covered in snow. His dog is at his feet, laying on his back, also getting snowed on. I waved like Forrest Gump because I'm out running and neither of us are sane. He waved, Then shrugged in a sort of frick it, right way that made me crack up. RIP dude, maybe you knew the secret to a good life. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.